for this session on messaging through forms and colors, we have our speaker, Srimati Sujata Prasad-ji, the advisor of National Gallery of Modern Art. Ma'am is an author and art columnist and has extensively written on art and culture. Ma'am, over to you.
Good afternoon, all of you. I should have prepared a lecture with images, etc., but I didn't do that. I was much too lazy, and Aisha at 9 points said that I had to do this session. So I'll try and make it a little interesting, but I think it's going to be prepared for a little whatever. But can we have a round of introductions so that I know who I'm speaking to? Can we, where should we start from?
I'm Sujata Luchar. You're inside. Yeah, and I'm a program producer here at ITC in the Center. I'm Shruti Nagpal, working here as Deputy Controller in the Media Center at ITC. Hello, I'm Vidya Gupta from ICCR in the Council for Cultural Relations. I'm working as a consultant here.
You're working as a consultant here, right?
No.
There, ICCR.
Hello ma'am, I am Prerna Kiran. I am a student of language economics. Hello ma'am, I am Anjali Singh and currently I am a content writer in Kashmir.
Hello, myself is Safiya Kadir, Library Information Officer in ITC.
Hello ma'am, my name is Pooja Reddy. I am currently working as a content moderator in the field of Ministry of Culture in the government.
Myself, Sanjay Agarwal. I work for World News 24/7, so I cover 13 ministries, including the Ministry of Culture.
Myself, Dean Amrit, working as area over Adelaide Bond.
Myself, Vinay Singh, working as a video editor in IGC.
Good afternoon, ma'am. This is Anshu. I work as a financial knowledge executive at Archery. It's an art advisory firm.
So I know Shruti, and she herself is so full of knowledge about art and culture that I've been questioning why she's here. You don't need to introduce yourself. I can introduce her.
Hi, this is Harshit. I'm from Indian Institute of Mass Communication. I'm currently working with insurance.
Right. You're exempted, actually.
My name is Vivek.
Right.
Hello, ma'am. Good evening. My name is Abhi. I'm working with a legal and risk firm, Language First, and simultaneously I'm doing cultural informatics with IDFC.
Oh, right. So, I'm going to pass around an image, not very nicely scanned and taken out. But I want to pass it around. How many of you recognize this image? Yeah, all of you, right? It speaks to all of you, and it's been speaking to all of us for decades, if not centuries. 1905, means the last big word. Do we really want to project something that everyone knows? You know, it's become part of our calendar art, it's now part of our DNA. So, you know, in visual art, Bharat Mata, and all of you know Vande Mataram, and you probably all of you also know that Bankim Chandra Chatterjee penned the famous poetry in very Sanskritized Bengali in the 1870s. And it was used in a film called Anand Mat. And when, if at all I can use the word viral for 1870s and 1880s, it went viral. And became some sort of a rallying point for nationalists. Strangely, later also it had, people began to see communal overtones in it. But at the time that it was penned down and disseminated, it brought together Swadeshi, all our leaders for the Swadeshi movement and later Swaraj. The first two stanzas of the poem, which were later I think in 1937 or thereabouts, the Congress used it as a national poem. Talks about Lakshmi and goddess Lakshmi, it talks about goddess Saraswati, but more than that talks about India as the motherland with its orchards, its greenery, its incredible mountains and so on and so forth. So Bharat Mata was done in pretty much the same spirit, but we will come to this later. So when Harsha, she told me that I had to speak for at least half an hour on messaging through forms and colors. I thought that the topic was much too didactic, and why should forms and colors be messaging? But then they do message. There's a text and subtext to everything. That is sketched, that is drawn, and that is painted. And that is photographed, So I want to start with photography. And I don't want to limit myself just to India and its culture, but talk about photography in terms of a potent symbol, a potent instrument that passes on messages that have perhaps far more value than words do. So photography, as you know, is a form of art. And even black and white, the two dominant colors in photography in the early parts of the 20th century and much of 19th century, before colors dominated the palette of photography, they were the two most powerful colors. So let's start. I never do this, and I'm not known to read, but I'm just trying to, this is in a certain sense slightly difficult to conceptualize, and I'm using the easier route by reading because I'm just too foggy today, and I thought let me write it down. So as I said, I should begin by talking about photography, which is a very, very potent and a powerful medium of expression. Visual stories, carry the weight of history. They are safety nets against the fallibility of memory and bring to light the extraordinariness of both exceptional and the most quotidian of moments. You have very puerile, very prosaic pictures, and you have very monumental ones. Needless to say, the messaging is powerful. I've been talking about it, and now let me take you back to the freedom movement and the role photographs and photographers played in the movement. And a lot of these photographs of Gandhi and the Dandi March, etc., were by photographers who were not Indians. They were global photographers. In any case, in art, there are no boundaries. So I would like to start by talking about, a Swiss photographer called Walter Gotthard. His black and white photo essay on Gandhi's Dandi March probably did what typewritten text could not have done, equally engaging with his images, now the quotidian images, which have now become iconic, of Gandhi shaving with a Gillette blade, or sipping, or being amused by a story in Times of India. I wish I could show it to you. So there's Gandhi sitting with a paper, and it was such a beautiful advertisement even for the newspaper. And he's reading the paper. Very powerful image. Then 15 years later, and I don't need to mention, I'm sure all of you have seen Gandhi with a giant charkha, And the semiotics not only of the photograph, but the semiotics of the charkha, what the charkha stands for. It stood for independence, it stood for pride, it stood for a very nationalistic sort of pride and fervor. So this photograph was taken again by an American photographer who famously was a war reporter, Margaret Brooke White. She, and it was, charkha was also symbolized, some sort of non-confrontational protest and resistance. So all this was symbolized and brought together in this beautiful, evocative image of Gandhi and his spinning wheel. And it went beyond words. It was immortalized in a tribute in the Life magazine after Gandhi was assassinated. And of no less significance for Cartier-Bresson, you must have heard of this photographer who first talked about the decisive moments and about how the camera actually captures the most decisive moments of history. So Cartier-Bresson also came to India around the time that Gandhi was assassinated, and he did a whole photo essay of Gandhi's last journey. Very evocative, very powerful. I want to also talk a little bit about how coterminously to photojournalism, which began in 1930. There were magazines like Paris March, there was a magazine called Look that we don't hear of now, Life, etc., that recognized the role of photo essays in transforming the way people perceive reality. There were surrealistic photographers, just as in art, in photography also there was a movement of surrealism. They used the medium to explore what they called was the worrying strangeness of the world, to the delight of avant-garde publishers, even as the development of portable cameras with faster exposure time gave war photographers a chance to document stories from the front line during World War II. Each story bled into the other. Recently, there's a beautiful museum, and if you haven't seen it, I'd recommend that you go and see it. There's a little microcosmic, what should I say, a little museum that has been created in the art fair which is going on. It's called Museum Camera. Recently, they did a stunning photo essay on Robert Capa's war photography. Absolutely stunning. But it was not just his war photographs that he was known for. I'm sure all of you have heard of Pablo Picasso. We've taken some delightful photographs of Picasso playing with his children by the beach and other such photographs. He was allowed entry into his house and into his world, which was rather difficult because Picasso was quite a maverick, he was eccentric, he was everything that a really good artist is. So Capa worked as a war correspondent during the Spanish Civil War, World War II, and the 1948 Arab-Israel War, using a very small 35 mm Leica camera to take photographs in the heart of conflict zones. Each photo carried a potent anti-war message. He joined soldiers in the trenches, remarking, "If your pictures are not good enough, you're not close enough, and you're not good enough." Tragically, the photographer was killed, and I discovered this when I was viewing the exhibition in Museum Camera, when he stepped on a landmine in Vietnam in 1954. The genocidal impact, and I'm bringing you back to India and Indian photographers. I don't need to even elaborate on photographers like Raghu Rai, is iconic, and Pablo Bartolomeo. So I'm talking about the genocidal impact of the poisoning of the Bhopal gas tragedy, was exposed to the world through the photo essays of both of them. And the one photograph that sticks, the baby, exactly. It is completely soul-stirring, that image of the baby being buried. And the baby was, a girl, an unknown girl. It doesn't matter if she was a girl or a boy, but it received the World Press Photo of the Year award. And it was taken in color by Bartolomeo, and the same photograph was used in black and white, right sets for a monochrome tone. Together the images work like Kafka's description of stories that grieve us deeply, working as an axe to the frozen sea of amnesia. What could be more powerful in terms of messaging than that? The camera remains even today on the front line of protest and of resistance, documenting war, stories of human resistance, famines, migrations, and political and social strife. In recent times, this is again a photograph that I would like to have shown, but I'm sure all of you have internalized it, of a Syrian boy washed ashore, a small Syrian boy with his little shoes. This is a photographer called Nilüfer Deniz, and she took this photograph in 2015. The coastal town of Turkey after his rubber boat capsized. It is the most defining images of the Syrian refugee crisis, I think. In terms of messaging, again, it impacted the world much more than body counts that filled newspaper pages. European governments then began to open up their borders to train loads of Syrians, especially countries like Germany, just like they did in 1977. In 1977, too, the photographs of fishing boats packed with South Vietnamese refugees, taken by Associated Press photographer Eddie Adams, facilitated the entry of more than 200,000 refugees in the United States. So this is the role that art plays, that photographs play. And now about art. So as I began by saying that no conversation about messaging through forms and colors can be initiated without mentioning this particular seminal 1905 painting titled Bharat Mata. The painting depicts a pastoral goddess. Even if he was, it's not clear whether he was painting a goddess that we know in Hindu iconography. And yet, she is so like the goddesses that we know. So, holding a white cloth, a book, a sheaf of paddy, and prayer beads, representing clothing, learning, food, and spiritual salvation. These symbols of Indian motherhood were key to the aim of, to his conceptualization of a spiritual identity for his people in direct contrast with the materialist or what he perceived as the materialism of Europe. The painting reinforced the argument for an art movement rooted in Indian nationalism, in Indian ethos, breaking away from the prevailing European influences and seeking inspiration from its own tradition and heritage. The movement later grew into the Bengal School of Art. It was championed by the Bengal School of Artists. Then we have partition artists who also experienced the Bengal family, like Robbie Manzil, Chito Prasad, Pradosh Gupta. Who use stark forms and extremely dark color palettes to reflect the darkness of the times they were living in. The social realism impacted people much more than the visual images shared by the photojournalists. For instance, Govardhan Dash's family series became an inspiration for the Progressive Writers Association, and recently at the place where some of us are and a lot of us are exposed to at the National Gallery of Modern Art, Kishma Desai, you must have heard of the Partition Museum in Amritsar. So she brought a slice of it for viewing, in one of our galleries at the National Gallery of Modern Art. And there were small images from the partition art that, she culled out from our own collection and put up there, these partition artists that spoke much beyond, spoke much more than words can. So stories, as I said, nestled within nestled, there's so many stories and there's so much that one can say on this topic. In the 1980s, there was a Chilean artist who was called by the name of Ditborn, who created what we call airborne paintings consisting of myriad forms and used a very neutral color palette. These folded artworks were smuggled to art galleries abroad from Chile. Chile was, as you know, at that point of time, in a very tight regime of dictatorship. It was his way of critiquing Augusto Pinochet's dictatorship, which ran from 1973 to 1990. And people outside Chile got to know about all the draconian things that were going on, and, about, what should I say, the pure evil or whatever, the the demon that was ruling, who was ruling up in Chile. More recently, there's a whole body of art which is called migration art. It tells the story of, that 80 to 100 million displaced people worldwide, and every day the numbers are increasing. This is migration not only caused by war and strife, but migration caused by climate change. So, at the Venice Biennale, Art Biennale, the 59th edition of which was held recently with nearly 60 participant countries, it was evident that in an era where people are inundated with messages, through art it is possible to draw attention to the era's greatest challenges like climate change, war, and the resultant displacement. So one of the most powerful paintings again at the Venice Biennale in the last edition was that of Ngma from India. It's called Bogan Chronicles. It was a painting which was created majorly between 2011 to 2016, but it's a painting that seems to never end. She keeps adding to it, So it's a very nuanced wall map that she's created with bleach, yarn, and muted colors to poignantly track the routes that the migrants have taken. And because the process of migration and displacement goes on and on and on, her painting has not ended. Or take the sculptural work of the Palestinian artist Mona Hatoum. She's a very famous artist that connects a pair of suitcases with strands of a woman's hair, messaging the anguish and trauma of separation from her country, from familiar roots, from her friends, from whatever, her cosmos. And finally, let's recall the image that has endured, at least with my generation, of Guernica, one of 20th century's most famous images painted for the Spanish Pavilion at a 1937 exhibition in Paris by Picasso. Using a very, very somber tone of grey and blue on a vast canvas, he showed the suffering of people and also animals in searing detail. The message could not have been starker. It showed the visceral horrors of war that are not just an affront to human civilization, but to life. It did not stop there, and the painting, one cannot say that it stopped the Spanish Civil War or saved Spain from some 20-30 years of fascist rule, but the flames of that painting, I would like to think metaphorically, still burn in modern history, forcing us to respond to them as real and tangible moments of incredible violence and pain. Across the planet, across centuries, there are infinite varieties of art to look at, and where does one start and where does one end? I wish I had defined this thought within boundaries, within the boundary of India, but I found it very difficult to do that because, as I said, in art there are no boundaries, fortunately, because we have become so boundary-centric as our generation. So across the planet, across centuries, there are infinite varieties of art to look at and marvel over their nuanced messaging through the creative interplay of forms and colors, but nothing gets better than cave art, actually. The oldest being abstract form, when you look at old cave paintings, there's some very defined figurative painting, but if you go a little further, then they're abstract paintings. That the Neanderthal said, and a lot of paintings that go back 60,000 years, 64,000 years, have been found in South African caves, caves found in Australia and the Kakadu National Park. Then there are upper Paleolithic age caves found in France, in the Amazon in Spain, and most recently the finds have been in Indonesia. The discovery has been vital for information on human ancestors, the way they lived, and their problem-solving ability. And so if you try to get into the semiotics of it all, it's much more than just the physical form, it's conveying something. Let's look at our own historical treasures, the Bhimbetka caves, for instance, near Bhopal, which are, it's a UNESCO heritage site dating back again 30,000 years or more, has a distinction of having the oldest known rock art in India, exhibiting the earliest traces of human life. In absolutely riveting drawings of animals like the bison, tiger, elephant, rhino, evoking the everyday challenges that humans were facing at that time, that the cave dwellers were facing at that time, using iron oxide or the red ochre and burnt bones or charcoal to produce the black color. The Ajanta cave paintings, I'm sure a lot of you have visited Ajanta, made during the 1st century BC. These paintings are inspired by Mahayana Buddhism. And next to Ajanta, if you look at Ellora, again a UNESCO World Heritage Site with about 100 caves. It has the distinction of being the world's largest rock-cut cave that features Hindu, Buddhist and Jain art. That has undeniable historical importance, and every story has a message. But let me take you also to our folk and indigenous art. Our country has several of them, and it's not possible for me to talk about each one of them. Just a single state. Is there someone from Orissa here? A single state of Orissa. There was a time when the government of India was really busy trying to do this exercise of culture mapping, and that time I was in the Ministry of Culture. It was a very difficult process because it's easier to map tangible heritage, or whatever is left of tangible heritage, because now we read that ASI in a recent, in the last session of Parliament, there was a question about monuments that had disappeared. And I was shocked to see the number of monuments that have disappeared from a place like Delhi. One would assume that we would keep a track of the monuments, however big and small. But they have just disappeared after being listed by ASI initially in the 60s and 70s, just vanished through the years. So, but it's so much more difficult to keep a track of your tangible heritage, which tangible heritage is your traditional knowledge systems, your songs, your dances, your folk stories, your folklore, your languages, everything. All that is part of our intangible heritage tradition. But let's mention a few of our indigenous art traditions here. And I was talking about, the reason why I was talking about cultural mapping, I lost track, is that we started with the state of Orissa, and we discovered that there are 460 art forms in Orissa, which are living art forms. And I can't think of any other country, where one particular part of the country would have so many living traditions. So we have a lot of these living traditions. For instance, the art emanating from the Western Ghats, the Burli, you can see a lot of it here in IGCA. It's one of the oldest art forms that can be traced back to 2500 BCE. That actually seems really contemporary, but the messaging is through circles, triangles, and squares with red ochre background. But it depicts probably daily life activities like fishing, hunting, agricultural operations, and so on. Now, the art emanating from the Gondi tribe in Madhya Pradesh, revived by the iconic and unforgettable artist Jagat Singh Shyam, and if you go to the art fair, there's a whole section devoted to him, one of the most beautiful sections. And he, at least now, the contemporary artists may not be doing it, but he used colors from charcoal, from cow dung, from leaves and flowers to create vibrant artwork that spoke to viewers about the myths and legends of rural life. Then Odissa's enchanting Patachitra, the equally enchanting Kalamkari of two areas, Sri Kalahasti and Machilipatnam, and the Kalighat painting originating from 19th century Bengal that began with traditional iconography but later sought to raise awareness about social conditions under colonial rule and also about gender inequities. You see in some Kalighat paintings, it's actually you can see rural feminism at its best. So the one that I like really is that of a woman who has got a jharu in her hand and she's hitting at a man, probably her misogynist husband or partner or whatever. but my focus today is going to be Mithila painting that developed around the ancient city of Mithila, the birthplace of Sita. Discovered quite by accident, it was like most things, good things. This too was discovered by accident in 1934. There was a huge earthquake in Bengal. I talked about the Bengal earthquake. But that earthquake, went through Orissa, Bengal, Bihar. Massive. So there was a British collector of that region called William Archer. He went to the area and through the broken boundaries of the house, he saw beautiful column, beautiful artwork on the floor, like on the walls of the houses, the inner walls, especially the inner, what should I say, the sanctorum of the house, where the couple or the led its conjugal life, had beautiful Courbet painting on the walls. So, even though the motifs seem to be steeped in Indian mythology, Archer liked what he saw in homes ravaged by the earthquake. And he actually thought that the forms were fairly abstract. Even when, he saw figures from, figures like Ram and Sita and so on, and he had stayed long enough to realize that they were from Hindu iconography. But part of it was so abstract, especially the Tantric school was completely abstract. And he thought that it resembled the art of artists like Nero and Picasso. He wrote about it. This form enjoyed another surge of popularity in the 1970s and 80s in countries like Japan, Germany, France, and US. Paradoxically, this is really strange. I did a posting in Bihar and I found out that the biggest museum and probably the only museum dedicated to Madhubani painting was made by a sort of art lover called Hashikawa, who took some small amount of these paintings initially. The artists would not sell their paintings at that stage. They were not commercial. Up to you go to Delhi Art and they bargain with you, and the colors are all synthetic, and you can pick up as many paintings as you want. But, around the time that Hashikawa went in the 70s, it was not yet commercial. So he went to artists like Sita Devi and others and bought their paintings, and this museum is at a place called Tokamachi in Japan. Now it has a very large collection. So traditionally the themes of the paintings differ, but the central theme was obviously love, fertility, gods and goddesses, and traditional rituals. But I feel that there would have been subtext to all of this. There always is. And in recent times, a lot of women artists, especially who, by recent times, I mean after the 80s and 90s, who started also, building themes around their own lives and, fairly strident feminist themes around these paintings. So social organizations of the area especially use the traditional forms and colors for social messaging, and there are organizations also that if you go to Madhubani, in Jitwarpur especially, all the trees will be painted. The trunks of the trees will be painted. So when I asked them why you're doing this, they said this is to protect the trees. So this is their own Chipko Andolan that's happening through art. This is a very novel way of doing it. So, and the government of course realized its use and has been using it for advocacy. So now every railway station in Bihar, especially in the Mithila, like the north of Bihar region, has Madhubani painting. The color palette is mainly from earth pigments, no longer, so as I said. But the art practice is governed once again by 5 basic elements. What are the 5 basic elements of life? Earth, water, fire, sky, and air. So they are symbolized by using the following colors. There are complementary colors being used for each one of them. So for earth, there's yellow. for water is white, fire red, sky blue, air black. And so strange that air is black because now, I mean, in Delhi they say the air is darkening. In Madhubani the air isn't darkening. It's very nice blue skies, and you have, in one district you may have some 600 ponds. So it's all very lush and it's all very Ramayan-like even now in places. Also a sign of underdevelopment and maybe zero development, the fact that it's like that. They're symbolized, but deconstruction, if you start deconstructing the artwork, it is a little tough. So this is why it was compared to the art of Miro and Picasso, because you have to know what they meant when they used a circle or a triangle or a square. And for this particular lecture, it's all along, I have been exposed to this form for a very long time. I did a posting in the art, and I worked with rural women in a project, and Madhubani was one of my areas. And they tried to explain, but I was like, yeah, whatever. I don't want to get into such details, but for this particular session, I tried to find out what the significance of the triangles was. I found out this. A triangle with a tip towards the sky denotes fire, with tip downwards water, the square depicts the earth, the circumference of the circle denotes air, and finally all forms emerge from the bindu. And what does the bindu represent? I don't need to tell you today. The binary, this is actually not a binary, in Indian art, it's like, that represents both Shiva and Shakti, which are very complementary, and it's depicted in different ways. So I want to now, after having talked about Madhubani art, I want to leave some time for Q&A. But I want to again end this whole thing by the mention of Swadeshi and Swaraj. And when you think of messaging, of course, the contemporary times you can think of different types of messaging. It could be messaging against, what should I say, imperialism. It could be messaging against materialism that is overwhelmingly present now and tangible. It could be messaging about, public health practices. It could be messaging about Swachhata. So many other kinds of messaging that are so overt, and all of you know. But when you talk about messaging in the colonial times, and you have to think of one artist. So the artist that I think of apart from Rabindranath Tagore is Nandlal Bose. He was not only an iconic artist, but he was the pedagogue of the Bengal School of Art. At the Mahatma's behest, and the Mahatma had not even met him when he invited him. He visited Shantiniketan, he'd gone to Kala Bhavan, but during his first visit to Kala Bhavan, I think Nandlal Bose was traveling, but he saw a little bit of his art and he invited the artist to work on the Congress pavilions, some of the Congress sessions. So typically, when Congress sessions were held at that time, a township used to be created near the river. And Gandhi and Nehru, influenced by Gandhi, would often do it, in a quasi-rural setting. It was neither urban nor rural, but quasi. So, in any case, during the fairs for the Lucknow Congress, these townships were created, and Nandlal Bose was asked to come and create them with material that was local, that could be found locally, with colors that came from the earth, so earth colors, and using artists from the region. I mean, look at the vision of Gandhi, the Mahatma. He was, what should I say, he wanted to reach and raise our pride in things that were Indian, that was Swadeshi, and this was his way of doing it. He also, there was another reason why he was doing it, I think, that there's such a dichotomy, or there's a clear binary, there's high art and then there's this folk art. So he wanted to bridge that. And the whole idea was also that a lot of these people, in the Congress session, there would be 1,50,000 people coming from आसपास के गांव. So उसका पूरा उद्देश्य ये होता था कि वो जो गांव वाले आए, they should not feel alienated. उनको ये नहीं लगना चाहिए कि ये क्या हम देख रहे हैं. They should feel connected to the art. और इसका जो epitome इसका जो हुआ वो हरिपुरा में हुआ. All of you must have heard of the Haripura panels. So the Haripura panels were created for the Indian National Congress session at Haripura in 1938, and the underlying message was the same, linked to Swadeshi and Swaraj, using really bold colors, very bright colors, and other elements of folk art or indigenous art. So this was the posters, were communicating with ordinary villagers through the venue, as they did in Paris now. And this was not the last of it. Later in other congresses, like Ramgarh Congress, he used to paint the Maharati, or rather Rajendra Prasad, using Gandhian principles, invited Upendra Maharati to come and do up the Congress township. I also want to tell you, I don't know, I should have brought an image of, but you can see it on your phone, of Nandal Bose's iconic lino cut. He made from linoleum, sort of his representation of Gandhi leading the Dandi March became the most, in a sense, appropriated and the most admired figure of non-violent civil disobedience. So, what could be better in terms of messaging? You talk about the mesmerizing elixir of truth, ahimsa, and soul force that together come, together represented Satyagraha. And this particular very simple artwork represented all of that. It influenced artists through the generations, both traditional and contemporary, and I'd like to think in some ways influences them even now. Slightly abrupt end to my lecture, but since this is also my subject, I can go on and on, so I would like to just leave the session open now. I'm exhausted by time actually. If there are any questions, please feel free to ask me, otherwise you can end the question. And please, I would like to invite all of you to come to the National Gallery of Modern Art, where we are exhibiting. We have two exhibitions, and one of them we just ended, called Hastanzar. Hastanzar was Nandal Bose's entire extraordinary retrospective that we did, including a couple of posters from the Haripura poster series of at that time 400 or more posters. 400, 400 or thereabouts for Haripura. 600. Okay, 600. But what we have on view right now is an exhibition of 10 modernists who engage with colonialism in different ways. And you should come and see what they've done and how powerful the messaging of their artwork is. Yeah. बताइए.
भाषण के लिए आपने महत्वपूर्ण जो बात की, पहले आपने फोटोग्राफी के बारे में बताया, उसमें मैं सब आपको जानकारी देना चाहूँगा कि हमारे पास मैं आईडी से भी कार्य हूँ, हमारे पास 3 महत्वपूर्ण कलेक्शन है. सबसे पहले है राजा दीनदयाल, तो उसका एक फोटो आता है जो हमारे पास है. उसके साथ साथ जो उससे समझ कैमराज होते थे, फॉक्स टाइप कैमरा, वो भी हमारे यहाँ पर संग्रहित है. तो क्वाइट रेयर कलेक्शन राजा दीनदयाल कलेक्शन. Not only photographs but also came for negatives. There used to be big glass plate negatives. In fact, at that time, those days, the cameras were carried in cardboards. So special card was prepared to carry the camera and then
I
take
see that.
photographs.
आप YouTube कैमरा में गए हैं जो आदित्य आर्य का जो है?
Yes, it has been.
Collection.
In fact, we did a lot of exhibitions one also having
Right.
And the second important collection was Shambhusha. Shambhusha, he has photographed, Gurudev, he has followed him and he also documented his entire journey. And also Sunil Jana, he has photographed the ending which affected Bengal at that time. So these photographs are very symbolically very important representative of that era. And apart from that, we talked about the handling art business.
So how have you saved these photos? They're in negative form or have you, what have you done?
Both in fact, especially when we talk of, this Rajaji there, Rajaji have the glass plate negatives. They're all well preserved negatives. And apart from that negatives, we have the prints also. The bromide prints, we have had the bromide prints, black and white prints also, and also the furniture, the photographic furniture which used to be there at the time, the studio furniture. They're also ideas acquired from the Rajaji Painting. That is a private collection, after the center in fact. So this is Rajaji there, then I talked about Shambhusha and this Sunil Jana. Then we have the other major collections of handmade artwork. We have a good collection of the photographs, as you said that he around 42 to 46. He had been to different parts of the country from his Delhi. He was not staying Delhi. There are some good scenic.
He came very after Gandhi's assassination.
Right. So there are good scenic photographs of Kashmir also. So very representative, Kashmir and this Gandhi also photographs. So this was a collection, representative collection. I talked of the photographs, and you can go to our archives. We have special archives, we have cultural archives, and under this cultural archive we have these photographs, photographic collection. So if you indicate that photography was not taken as an art form. So now there is widespread talk about it, and now people talk about it as photography as
an art form. After all, when the National Gallery of Modern Art was set up in the 1950s, photography, photographs were part of the collection.
But then only I believe 3 years back, only now we have the degree in photography. There was no such institution to impart diploma or degree at that time. And when we talk of the first photographer, Rajaji there, so his journey, he was from Roorkee. He did it, not Roorkee, he was nearby the place, village there. From there he went to Roorkee. He did work as a draftsman. And from draftsman he took as a cadet. He did closely cadet. He was the royal photographer of different royal families in India. Nizam and others also. And he was first to establish these studios across India. And he was also invited to London. So this is the photographer's journey, started from India and then all across. Then we talked about Madhubani painting. So Madhubani, I just wonder that in the present circumstance we see, the modernization, and what would be the fate of these traditional art forms when they are set apart from that, from the holdings, from the background of tradition, which is moved around them, when there is no such thing happening, no such in their perception. So what is the fate of these art forms in the coming years?
So they have essentially reinvent themselves. So Madhubani painting, initially, if we talk about the time when they were discovered by Archer, it was being done in the world. It was only as late as the 67 drought year. Drought was starting in 67, and the various droughts that we have faced in the early 70s. It was only then that there was this. Oh God, what's happened to me? It was my Rashtrian person who, Kulkarni and Kamla Devi Chattopadhyay. They were sent by, they went to Bihar to see what could be done. And they encouraged, they and Upendra Maharati, who followed them, he was a young person at that time. So they encouraged the artists to, they gave them papers. Kulkarni actually carried a lot of handmade paper to transfer it on paper. And when I went to work in Bihar, since Madhubani was one of my मेरा कार्य क्षेत्र था, और मैं जब गई थी मैं 80 के क्लोजिंग ईयर्स में गई थी, उस वक्त फिर हम लोगों ने वहाँ पे संस्थाएं थी, सेवा मिथिला करके था, गौरी मिश्रा उसको चला रही थी, जस्ट लाइक द सेवा ऑफ हैदराबाद एंड लेटर सेवा ऑफ लखनऊ। तो वो उनके साथ मिलके फिर हम लोगों ने प्रेरित किया कि कपड़े पे किया जाए, साड़ीज, दुपट्टा, सो ऑल्दो आई डोंट रियली लाइक दैट, लेकिन फिर कपड़े पे करने लगे। So उसको और there are artists now in the younger generation who are making very contemporary painting. So their forms are traditional, what should I say, the grammar is traditional, but the themes are very contemporary, just as in Gond art. Gond art is like postmodern art, it's so contemporary. लेकिन हमारे जो आर्ट वर्ल्ड के आर्टिस्ट हैं, जो अर्बन है और एलीट है, उन्होंने ये बैरियर क्रिएट कर दिया है। ये जो आर्ट का कमोडिफिकेशन हुआ है, that has actually hurt these artists very badly, because they still, जितना भी contemporary बनाए, there still be a difference between them and a contemporary artist bred in a urban context. There will be a difference in pricing. उनके आर्ट फॉर्म को आप सबसे अच्छा देंगे किसी मधुबनी पेंटर को, तो आप छोटे पेंटिंग के लिए आप 25,000 देंगे। एंड यू गिव एक जतिन दास का एक लाइन भी ड्रॉ कर देंगे या कोई फॉर्म बना देंगे, आप उनको सीधा 3 लाख पे ले आएंगे।
नहीं, अब एक चर्चा ये थी कि ये जो जिज्ञासा मेरी जानने की थी कि हम जिन कलाओं को देखते हैं, जो कि जैसे मिथिला कला है या गौंड कला को देखते हैं, इसका जो परिवेश है, जो परिवेश जिस कारण में उभरा, अब हम ये इसको अलग अलग स्टाइल को लेकर के अब आप कह रहे इसका नवीनीकरण या उसमें कंटेम्पररी इशू डाल रहे हैं, लेकिन उसका वास्तविक जो प्रारूप था, वास्तविक प्रारूप जो था वो कुछ और था। अभी जैसे आप कह रहे हैं कि हमने वो कंटेम्पररी इशू दे रहे हैं, वो एक और चीज हो गई। अब इसके साथ साथ जो चीजें जो बदलाव आ रहा है इस परिवेश में, अब वो न गाँव रहा, न उस तरीका का जो ज्वेलरीज है वो भी नहीं रही। तो आपने उल्लेख किया कि जापान में पहला जो संग्रहालय बना उसी मधुबनी आर्ट का, ये भी वास्तविकता है कि जापान में बन गया, वहाँ से आर्टिस्ट को लिया गया। लेकिन मुझे लग रहा है जैसे मैं खुद से मेरे एकदम से चल रहा है, आप मेरे अंदर ही, मैं आपके साथ मुख रख रहा हूँ कि उस वक्त